Spotless by J.P. O'Brien. Tadashi rings the doorbell and takes 2 steps back. He slides a compact mirror from his pocket, uses it to adjust his tie, inspect his teeth, and flatten his eyebrows, then puts it away again. As always, he recalls his mother's words. "First impressions are everything." The door opens. With a smile and a respectful handshake, he greets his new client, then steps into her hallway. He bends to a knee and pulls a pair of white gloves out of the inner pocket of his bag. Mrs. Powell, seeing the immaculately arranged rows of cleaning substances and tools over his shoulder, nods to herself. Very organized. Tadashi stands up straight and bows his head. Thank you. Why don't we get started? They make their way through to the living room. Mrs. Powell offers Tadashi a cup of tea, which he politely declines. He casts a critical eye around while she awkwardly perches on the armrest of the sofa. I do apologize for the mess. The room is, if not messy, then cluttered, filled with archaic furniture and knickknacks that have accumulated over decades. On the dusty mantelpiece sits a hinged portrait frame showing a much younger Mrs. Powell gazing across to her sepia-toned beau. Tadashi's eyes fall on the photos. He clears his throat, then turns away. Not at all, Mrs. Powell. This is why I'm here, of course. 2 hours later, the place is barely recognizable, according to Mrs. Powell's expression, and she cannot thank Tadashi enough. She leads him back to the front door and gratefully hands him his fee. It's what I love to do, he says. And please, if you have any friends who could use my services, don't hesitate to put us in touch. I'll do that, replies Mrs. Powell. Once the door closes, Tadashi retrieves a small ledger and pencil from his bag, makes a note of the time, then replaces them and turns on his heels. Only when he is safely at the end of Mrs. Powell's street does he begin to loosen his tie. Mrs. Powell, to Tadashi's delight, does indeed put him in touch with one of her friends. The next week, standing outside the new house, he once again checks his tie, teeth, and eyebrows and waits to be greeted. Even before registering the lady standing and smiling up at him when the door opens, Tadashi cannot help but glimpse the mountains of hoarded stuff that occupy every last inch of hallway behind her. Coats piled on the stairs, towers of books blocking doorways, bags within bags everywhere else. Tadashi? Thank you so much for coming, Mrs Rudenas says, smiling nervously. Long overdue, as you can see. The young man is so caught off guard by what he sees behind her that he forgets to retrieve the gloves from his bag. They move through to her kitchen, which Tadashi finds much the same as the hallway. Surfaces buried, cupboards overflowing, even the chairs serving as supplementary storage. It smells musty and stale, and Tadashi internally considers it the messiest home he has seen in 8 years of professional cleaning. After a moment's awkward hesitation, Elena offers the reason. I'm told I have a hoarding disorder. Since my husband passed last year, I have an aversion to throwing things away. I'm terribly sorry to hear of your loss, Tadashi says automatically, before his words dry up. He takes another look around. Although I don't know if I can provide what you're looking for, Mrs. Rudenas, I recommend seeking the services of a different kind of professional. Oh, I am working with a grief counsellor, don't worry, and it has been incredibly helpful. I am no longer distressed by the mere thought of discarding anything. She laughs while Tadashi remains straight-faced. Together, we have decided that I am ready for the next step. Janie tells me you were exemplary. Mrs. Powell, of course. Well, I am grateful for her recommendation. What I mean is, I just need help deciding. Tadashi glances at the floor for a moment. All right, he says at last. We'll give it a shot. Marvellous. Can I offer you a cup of tea? No, thank you. Mrs. Rudenas, you undoubtedly have some clutter, but it seems to me to be quite manageable. Food packaging, plastic bags, boxes, and so on. If some of these are empty, we could... Tadashi, Elena interrupts. I wonder if we could perhaps begin in a different room. Charles and I spent so much of our time in the kitchen. It's still a little... Perhaps we could delay this room until I'm a little more warmed up. Tadashi conceals his perplexity with a respectful bow. Of course, Mrs Rudenas. We can begin wherever you feel most comfortable. He is led back through the hallway towards the living room. It, too, is filled to the brim with belongings. Clothing, newspapers, photographs, receipts, notepads, a stack of TV guides, books, trinkets, jars full of pens, and so on. In the process of looking around, Tadashi catches his dismayed expression in the mirror. He quickly replaces it with professional composure. Mrs Rudenas, I'm seeing a lot of sentimental items, but there is certainly plenty here that we can discard. Let's see. Tadashi presses a finger to his lips and realizes he is not yet wearing his gloves. After quickly remedying this, he selects the stack of old TV guides on the coffee table and holds them up for his client's approval. Elena looks crestfallen. No, I couldn't get rid of those. Tadashi freezes. Charles and I would sit together every week and mark the things we wanted to watch, see? Elena plucks a guide from the pile in Tadashi's hands and opens it to a random page. There are red circles all over the columns of listings. She inspects it with a reflective smile until the edges of her lips start to drop, then quickly closes it again. I see, says Tadashi. Then perhaps you could suggest something less liable to remind you of the late Mr. Rudenas. Elena agrees, and composes herself enough to look around. But looking around is all she does. Minutes pass. Tadashi stands still, holding his arms firmly behind his back so as not to be tempted to check his watch. After a while, having not managed to choose a single item, the twin feelings of pressure and failure become too much for Elena to bear. She breaks down sobbing. Tadashi averts his eyes and clears his throat. I can see how difficult this is, Mrs Rudenas. Why don't we simply consider today the initial discussion and arrange to meet at a later date instead? Maybe you could have another conversation with your counsellor in the meantime. Tell them what happened here. He allows a sniffling Elena to accompany him to the door. You must think I'm so silly, she admits as she opens it for him. This is just rubbish. There's no reason to keep any of it. Not at all, Mrs Rudenas. Some things are harder to let go of than others. We'll try again next time. As the door closes, Tadashi's shoulders slump. He pulls the ledger from his bag and checks the time, but his pencil merely hovers above today's date. They have accomplished nothing. Several days later, he approaches Elena's door for their second session. He stands uneasily on her front step for a moment before ringing the doorbell. Elena, on the other hand, greets him with renewed vigour. I spoke with my counsellor, she beams, leading Tadashi through to the living room again. He feels confident that today I'll be ready to toss the first things out. Tadashi manages to muster a crooked smile. But an hour passes, during which, to Tadashi's growing inner frustration, Elena finds herself unable to part with a single object yet again. Even the most innocuous items in her house, old newspapers, receipts, carrier bags, dried pens, all somehow seem to carry a memory of her late husband that renders them off limits for disposal. Elena grimaces at him, about ready to give up, but Tadashi decides to adjust his strategy. He loosens his tie and looks his client in the eye. What were some of Mr. Rudenas's best qualities, Mrs. Rudenas? The lady can barely conceal her smile. For a second, she has difficulty knowing quite where to start, but as soon as she finds the place, her words flow. Oh, he was such a kind, thoughtful man, and generous. Often he would come home with a little gift he'd picked up, for no other reason than to see how happy it made me. Thanks to Charles, I've got quite the collection of brooches. Some days we'd be late because I took too long deciding which one to wear. Elena suddenly notices something on the floor. She reaches down and picks up a folded paper bag from beside the coffee table. Tadashi's eyes follow her movements carefully. This must have been one of his gift bags. He never could get the hang of wrapping things, the poor devil. It was gift bags or nothing. Her eyes start to moisten. Tadashi feels himself tensing all over, but to his surprise, Elena bursts into laughter. You know, I can't for the life of me even remember which gift of his this was. I can let this go. Tadashi blinks. Pardon me? Elena hesitates as great relief washes over her. I think I said, I can let this go. Tadashi kneels to his bag, pulls out a roll of black bin liners, tears one off, then shakes it open with a rustle. Are you sure? He asks, holding the sack open for Elena. She nods. It's time. She places the gift bag inside. That's wonderful, Mrs Rudenas. Congratulations. This is a huge step. Elena fans herself with a hand as her bottom lip starts to tremble. Tadashi picks up one of the pens from the jar on the bureau beside them and holds it up. Let's try again. You have a lot of pens. Did Mr Rudenas like to write? Well, we always used to keep the free pens we would get. When our youngest, Danny, went off to university, he brought us a whole box of the things. Charles used to tease us. He'd be on the phone frantically patting his pockets. He'd shout, "Pen! I need a pen!" Chuckling to herself, Elena takes the pen from Tadashi and inspects it. You see, University of Kent. We must have at least 100 of these blasted things. I doubt any of them work anymore. In fact, Elena reaches for the entire jar of pens from the bureau. Without so much as a second glance, she pours them all out into the black sack in a dusty clatter. She then unceremoniously throws the first one in too. Tadashi can barely hide his smile. He places the bin liner on the floor and removes his white gloves, then picks up one of the TV guides from the coffee table and hands it to Elena. She flips it open and grins. Oh, look, megastructures, modern architectural marvels. Charles loved documentaries about building things. Can you think of anything more boring? We had an agreement. For every program he'd make me sit through about construction, he'd have to watch a Fred Astaire or Ray Bolger musical as payback. Elena drops the guide into Tadashi's open bin liner and exhales deeply. An hour later, they have made considerable progress on the living room. The carpet is once more visible, and a number of filled black sacks collect in the hallway, waiting to be discarded. Tadashi's role is now minimal. He simply sits on the sofa holding a bin liner open and listening to Elena's charming little stories. He finds them meandering, but always overflowing with sincerity and heart. Elena arrives at a bundle of old Christmas cards tied together with string. She unties the brittle knot, removes the top card, then proceeds to read it aloud. Dearest Elena and Charles, Merry Christmas. We loved your visit in the autumn and cannot wait to do it again next year. Hopefully the crows won't gang up on us this time. Please pass on our best to Elizabeth and Danny, and we wish you peace and happiness for 2004. Love from Cheryl and Martin. P.S. Conker says woof. Elena smiles and wipes away a tear. She looks apologetically at Tadashi, then moves to place the entire pile in the bag. Tadashi reaches up to stop her. No, not these. They're not rubbish. Really? But this one is 20 years old. That doesn't matter. Each one of these cards calls you a close friend or a beloved family member. They share a personal moment. Throwing things away is about making choices, but there is always room for items like this. In fact, these will be the first things to go in a new pile. Things that absolutely deserve to be kept. Then you can keep them in a separate box. A memory box, suggests Elena. Now, I like the sound of that. Tadashi takes Elena's hand in his own. This unexpected act stops Elena in her tracks. I need to thank you, Tadashi says quietly. I know I can be ruthless when I discard things, but I have often grown to regret it. After my wife and I split, I threw everything away. Not just things that belonged to her, but anything that reminded me of who I'd been with her. I thought that meant moving forward, but I just I learned not to get emotionally involved in possessions. Now I see that I wasn't allowing myself to process anything at all. Elena draws him near and gives him a great squeeze, all the pent-up emotion of both of their respective griefs melting away in the embrace. And you helped me see that letting go of things isn't letting go of him, she says. Over the following weeks, they develop a rhythm. Elena holds up an item, tells its story, and decides whether it goes or stays. A chipped teacup from their anniversary into the memory box. Charles's reading glasses discarded. Books migrate neatly back onto shelves, old newspapers and TV guides make their way into the recycling, and almost all of Mr. Rudenas' clothes are donated. They even come across several more University of Kent pens, one of which, to Elena's amusement, Tadashi elects to keep. I'm getting to know your life story so well, he grins. I'm starting to feel like it was my son who went there. Slowly but surely, the house transforms. Tadashi is soon able to wander from room to room, marvelling at the progress Elena has made. They finally arrive at the last room, the kitchen. But to Tadashi's delight, Elena exhibits none of the apprehension from their first meeting. He watches her drift blissfully around the room, now deftly practiced in the art of disposal, and the bittersweet thought occurs to him that his presence is no longer needed at all. At one point, while helping Elena to return several scattered utensils to their drawers, Tadashi realizes he has amassed 5 different can openers. He raises an eyebrow, holding one up and gesturing to the other 4. What would you like to do about all of these? Elena raises a hand to her cheek in embarrassment. Oh, when they are together in one place, it looks ridiculous. Charles used to have such difficulty getting the can opener to work, so he set out on a one-man mission to buy every last one he came across. I found it so charming, how utterly useless he could be. Tadashi cannot help but break a smile. Suddenly, Elena's eyes grow wide. I wonder, would it be all right if I kept more than one of those? I know it's silly, but having 2 in the drawer will make me smile every time I open it. Mrs. Rudenas, after all this time spent with me, you still don't see that you don't have to ask me permission. Elena exhales sharply through her nose. And Tadashi, after all this time spent with me, you still don't feel comfortable calling me Elena. My apologies. Elena. When the project is at last complete, Elena slowly leads Tadashi to the door and pays him the remainder of what she owes. He bows and slips it into his black bag, noticing her pen looking up at him from the inside pocket. He stands back up and glances at the hallway over Elena's shoulder. Where once stood an eye-wateringly messy clutter, now lies the monument to a loving couple who made this home together, then had to say a heartbreaking goodbye. It has been a real pleasure to work with you, Elena. I hope you'll get in touch if you ever need my services again. Elena looks over her shoulder at the spotless house behind her, then turns back with a grin. Maybe not for cleaning, but I'm always happy to reminisce. The following week, Tadashi stands in front of another new house. He rings the doorbell and takes 2 steps back. He goes through his first impressions routine and is soon greeted by Mrs. Hayden. Mrs. Hayden offers Tadashi a cup of tea before he gets started. I'd love one. You have been listening to the By Torchlight podcast. For more, visit patreon.com/bytorchlight or search By Torchlight on Spotify and YouTube.